Well, it's that time of year again. No, we haven't quite reached the dizzy heights of springtime yet. What it is though, is gambling time, and I absolutely love gambling time. And this year, I am trying to grow my earliest ever first early potatoes. Now I had this idea, I did this last year, and I had some great success, and I'll show you that in a bit how sort of last year worked out. But the story behind that was I was just randomly wandering through B&M one day, saw some seed potatoes, now a specific variety, and it's the ones I'm using again this year because they grow super fast. And I thought, you know what, for the sakes of a couple of quid, let's buy them, let's give it a try. And it was brilliant. Had loads of really good, brilliant little first early potatoes. It was marvelous. I thought, why not do it again? But we're going even earlier, so I'm 2 weeks earlier than I was last year. So today, when I'm filming, if I'm remembering right, I think today's the 16th of February. Last year when I did it, it was the start of March. Now it's a little bit of faffing, don't get me wrong. It's not going to be entirely straightforward. I don't know if you can quite see it back there, but we've got the wheelbarrow with the buckets in. We're going to grow them in the buckets. They're probably going to live in the polytunnel, depends on the weather. Speaking of the weather, you can probably see that it's cloudy. That's not a bad thing. Now during the day, this is, we're near enough midday, and it is a balmy 3.5 degrees centigrade here in Scotland. It's not too bad. To be fair, it doesn't feel it. It's not too bad at all. But the clouds are good, because what it means is overnight we're not going to get this massive dip in temperature right down into negative numbers, which is what we want. We want to keep everything just about right. But anyway, enough waffling from me. We're going to go over there. We're going to get on with this. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it. Like I say, there is a little bit of faffing. We do have some specific potatoes we're using, but hopefully, if it all works out in around about 10 to 12 weeks time, so what, middle of May sort of time, I might just have my earliest ever earlies. So I'll take you through what I've got here, how I'm going to use it, and what I'm going to do. And this bit, to be honest, it's pretty straightforward. 30-litre bucket. You get these off Amazon, all sorts of places. I've used these year after year after year. You usually buy them like packs of 10 for, I can't remember how much, but if I find some, I'll put a link in the description. Like anything I'm using today, I'll pop links in the description down below. Go and have a look. Now the compost, this compost was in these 2 buckets up until about 2 minutes ago when I emptied it into the wheelbarrow. This is probably the 4th, maybe the 5th year of using the same compost. I mean, I do top it up every now and again, because obviously when you're harvesting and stuff like that, you lose a handful here and there, so it does get the odd handful put in it, but the bulk of the compost, 95% of it, has been used for the last 4 or 5 years. So in terms of return on investment in growing these potatoes, it's pretty good. A plastic bucket, 4 or 5-year-old compost, and some nutrition in the seed potatoes that I'm going to put in. So let me take you through this. Let me show you these first of all, these little beauties. Now these are the specific variety that I'm using, and these are called Rocket. Now Rocket are one of the fastest growing potatoes you can get. The clue's kind of in the name, Rocket, as it suggests. Now they have been chitting. They've been chitting on my kitchen windowsill for around about 2 weeks. I'd like to have maybe left them another week, but you know what? They're not looking too bad at all. So all the little chits that are poking up on there, they're going to go off and grow extra potatoes in the buckets. And I've got 6, so as you might think, I'm going to do 3 in each bucket. I've found over the years that when doing the first earlies, I've tried 4, and I think it's maybe just a little bit of a squeeze, so I prefer 3 per bucket. So first things first, we're just going to chuck a layer of compost in there, and I'm probably going to come up about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches up the bucket there. It's not like an exact science. It's just kind of a little bit of a sort of feeling that I get. And I do the same every year, the way I'm going to sort of layer it. And in there, I'm going to chuck some nutrition, because the compost has been used 4 or 5 years. It's been drained of nutrition. So we just add some extra in. This one here, potato and vegetable fertilizer by Vitax. And I kid you not, it stinks to high heaven. It smells like the most strongest concentrated manure you've ever smelt. So I only assume that by that smell, it must be absolutely bloomin' marvellous. And I'm going to sprinkle it in. And the amount I'm sprinkling in is probably about a handful, a decent handful. And again, I'm going to dip in here, and this is fish, blood and bone, and I'm probably going to take about 3/4 of a handful, put it in there. I'm going to mix it around into the compost that I've just put in, because I don't want the seed potatoes sitting right on top of all that nutrition that I've just put in, because it can just cause the odd problem every now and again. So there's my first layer, and we'll use the handles actually, because they'll be quite useful. And let me turn it that way, it'll be easier to explain. So I'm going to put it in with the chits pointing up, and I'm going to stick it in near this handle. Now it's not, I don't know if you can see it, if I can get the right angle, because the compost will start to tip. You know, it's maybe about 3 or 4 inches in from the edge of the bucket on there. And if we call that 12 o'clock, right? So where this handle is, in terms of a clock, we'll call it 12 o'clock. And what we're going to do on top of that is dump another layer of compost. Now again, what's that? 3 and a bit, sort of double handfuls there. Again, about another 4 or 5 inches, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. Potato and vegetable fertilizer, bit of blood, fish and bone. Get my hand in there, give it a bit of a rummage around to mix it up. Next seed potato, and I'm probably going to put this in at about, I don't know, on the clock, 4 o'clock, because I want them to be sort of quite evenly spaced. So they're in the layers and that evenly spaced out. And again, rinse and repeat, exactly the same sort of thing. You see how simple it is? And we're just going to dump this in here like that. Fertilizer, again, about a handful. Fish, blood and bone, blood, fish and bone, whatever you want to call it, chuck it in. Give it a good mix around. Now, not like digging my fingers right into this layer, like the second layer and this top layer here. I'm not digging them right in because I don't want to disturb the seed potatoes below, because obviously we've put them in a specific place. Now this one, the final one, again, is probably going to go at about 8 o'clock, about 8:30 to be precise. So it's kind of going in between where 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock would be on a clock, and it's just sort of spacing them out as best as we can. Like I said before, I'm only doing 3 per bucket. I think if you do 4, I've done it in the 4 in the past, where I've had it like 12, 3, 6 and 9 on a clock, and it's sort of, they've maybe just been a little bit squashed. So 3, spacing them out and having them layered is pretty much about the perfect combination that I've found. So, bucket is done. It is sorted. I'm not going to water it, right? The compost is pretty wet anyway. The buckets just sit outside all year round. So they've been sitting outside. So the compost is wet anyway. Until I start seeing the green tops, until I see the shores coming up, I'm not really going to give them much more water. But we need to do something else to help protect the buckets. And for that, we'll head into the polytunnel. Now, I apologise in advance, right? It's a little bit messy in there, because at this time of year, when I'm getting all my projects done, all my different stuff around and about the allotment, the polytunnel becomes a sort of de facto workshop come dumping ground. So I'll attempt to make a bit of space for us to work in there, but there is stuff anyway, just to give you that little bit of advanced warning. And this is where we have just the tiniest, the smallest little bit of faffing or mollycoddling, or whatever you want to call it. So here's one of our original buckets, as it was when we finished it off outside with a compost or nutrition or seed potatoes. Now over here is the modified bucket with some bubble wrap wrapped around it. And it's not that complicated, it's just bubble wrap. Here's the other half of it that's going to go around the other bucket, and it's just joined at the side with a bit of, I've actually used a bit of polytunnel repair tape because it's what I've got in here. You could easily use sellotape, brown tape, parcel tape, string, whatever you've got. Just use whatever you've got to hand, and if you don't have bubble wrap, you can use something else. Experiment, try it out. This is my first time trying it with bubble wrap, because I think it's an improvement on last year. So last year, let me grab you this. This is agricultural fleece, and this is what I used around the buckets last year. Sounds a bit fancy. It's not that fancy. It's pretty thin material. It's not particularly fleecy. It just adds a bit of insulation around whatever you've got. Generally these days I'll use it on the beds outside just to warm them up a degree or two before things get planted in them in the springtime. So that's the buckets pretty much sorted. Now, a couple of things to mention. One, make sure you check out the new show that Tony C. Smith and I are doing on a Friday night. So on the Pot Your Mouth Gardening channel on a Friday night. 7 o'clock UK time. Thank Potty it's Friday. It's absolutely marvellous. The way I would describe it is wholesome. So if you want some wholesome videos, go and have a look at that. Me and Tony shooting the breeze, having a chat about anything and everything. Anyway, back to the potatoes. If you're using the plastic buckets like mine, when I tipped them out earlier on, I had a check on the bottom and there was 5 slugs. So there was 3 on one, 2 on the other. They've now been dispatched all the way over there. The slugs have gone, they're no longer on the buckets. Obviously the buckets are plastic, they're a bit damp, a bit wet, perfect conditions for slugs. So just have a check, but make sure your buckets are empty first. Don't tip them up and have a look at the bottom because we know what will happen there. The other thing I mentioned earlier on was about the level of compost in the buckets. Now obviously in these buckets, it's about 2 or 3 inches off the top at the moment. Now it looks like that because when I had it out in the wheelbarrow earlier on, I sort of went through it all to look for any little bits of any stones or any old sort of little tiddler potatoes I might have missed for last year, because we don't want them germinating in the buckets. And when I've done that, I've always had my hands in, I've sort of zhuzhed it up, you know, like people do with their hair, not me, but other people. Sort of zhuzh it up, and it's all aerated and it's got a lot of volume in it. And when I've put it in the buckets, it's like that. I reckon over the next couple of weeks, that'll compact it down a bit and we'll see the level drop. So it'll just take a handful or 2 of new compost, whack it in there, jobs are good. Anyway, an important question. Are you gambling? Are you trying anything early? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you trying extra early potatoes like me? Down south, it might be pretty easy. Up north here in Scotland, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to trying it. You're trying chilies early, tomatoes, whatever you're trying early. Let me know in the comments down below. And anyway, hopefully 10 to 12 weeks time anyway, we should have some brilliant new potatoes. And there's nothing quite like your own homegrown new potatoes, fresh out the bucket, get them washed, chuck them in the pan, boil them up, bit of butter, bit of parsley or mint, whatever you fancy. Oh, there's nothing quite like the taste of them. And if you want to find out if it works or not, and you're not already subscribed, please think about subscribing. It's absolutely free. Just click the red button down below. You'll subscribe and you can come back in 10 to 12 weeks to see if this has worked or if I've just wasted my money on some seed potatoes. But there's only one way to find out. Anyway, that's me done for today. Thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now, folks.